Joining us right now, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. I'm pleased to have right here on NBCSN because he precedes us every single day on PFT Live in the mornings. And then the PFT PM podcast I will be recording later on today. His other guests are two guys named Joe Burrow and Chase Young. Chris,
heard of them?
Mike Florio, where am I in the run of show with those two guys later on today?
Yeah, we're still working all that out. It's a very delicate process.
It is, I'm fragile, Mike. Just be very careful.
Aren't we all? We all are to a certain extent.
Deep down,
Rich,
yes.
How are you, buddy?
I'm good. Good to chat with you. Everybody okay in your world and your family and everybody else out there?
Everything's good. Everything's good. I have not left our property for 30 days now, and it's kind of like you get to a point where you want to see how high the streak will go. Like I'm 26 away from DiMaggio. So
okay. Yep.
I really don't want to leave now, and I think the people who live in my town prefer that I not. So it's a good trade-off.
Well, look, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't want to jinx it. You know what I mean? Like let's just leave that one there and just keep doing what you're doing, Mike. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I know. Yeah, you start thinking about it too much before you know it. You jump in your car and you just take off and drive down the hill just because it's gotten into your head. So there's a good chance that my car battery is dead by now, so I couldn't leave if I wanted to.
I got it. Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's get into it, sir. You've got Burrow on later. There's no question he's number one overall, unless you think somebody's going to do a YOLO Ditka trade, or you're hearing anything like that at all, or this is just a formality with Burrow.
Well, here's the thing. You never know when they're telling you the truth when they send out the smoke signals that they're not going to trade the pick or the Dolphins aren't going to trade up for the pick. I mean, if anybody trades up, it's going to be the Dolphins, right? The Dolphins have been doing their homework on Joe Burrow. The Bengals have done all their homework on Joe Burrow. And Brian Flores, the coach of the Dolphins, can say all he wants that they don't want to make the investment necessary to move up. And Chris Greer, the GM of the Dolphins, can say the same thing. And the Bengals can say, we're not going to trade this pick. We're using this pick. And then you make an offer to the Bengals that they can't refuse and that they recognize they shouldn't refuse. And frankly, all due respect to the Bengals, that's one of the wild cards here. Will they know when they've been given an offer that they can't and shouldn't refuse? But if Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, Rich, swoops in, and I've tried to think of the most delicate way to put this, but Ross is either 80 or close to it. You get the Leon Hess dynamic at some point where you say, look, in my lifetime, I want to have a franchise quarterback. And we have squandered draft picks time and again over the course of my ownership of the team. So what if we have to throw another pick or two onto the pile to get the Bengals to say yes to this? And if they're doing that behind the scenes, they're not going to tell us that. That's my point. It looks the same from our perspective, if it's happening or if it's not happening. So if anything happens with Joe Burrow, other than him going to the Bengals, it's going to be out of the blue at some point in the next 3 days. A trade is done, and it shocks us just like when the Falcons moved up to number one with the Chargers 19 years ago to get Mike Vick.
Well, I mean, I looked it up. Stephen Ross is 80 in about 3 weeks' time, and a great reference of the old Jets owner, Leon Hess, who, I just had flashbacks of Kotite and things like that that I need to just get through for the moment. But you make a very valid point, Mike, in that the Dolphins need to do it and do it now in many ways, but why wouldn't that still be Tua? What are you hearing right now? And you want to talk about smokes and screens? My gosh, you're either hearing Tua's fallen because nobody really believes his medical until they can actually put their hands on him, or they're just saying all that because they think he's as special as everybody thought he was the minute he looked off a safety against Georgia. What do you think about that, Mike?
One last thing about Burrow and Ross, because it dovetails with the Tua stuff.
Sure.
I caught wind very early on in the process that Ross absolutely loves and covets and wants Burrow, and I heard it in a way that passed through my BS filter, because when it comes to pre-draft rumors, your BS filter has to be extremely thick and very selective. When I started hearing, for example, Rich, that Tua is potentially going to slide out of the top 10, my first thought was, well, the team that's holding the 11th overall pick is putting this out there, because that happens. If you love a guy, you put bad stuff out there in the hopes that he slides down the draft and you can draft him. If you don't like a guy, you put out all sorts of good stuff so some sucker out there picks the guy that you don't want anyway, and it pushes someone that you do want farther down the board. But I started hearing from way too many people that Tua is going to slide out of the top 10. Now, all it takes is one team. But I've heard from too many people that he's going to slide because the doctors employed by the teams cannot put their hands on Tua, cannot personally observe him. And the teams are concerned, Rich, that the doctors who are accountable to us can't tell us everything's fine. We don't care if the doctor that has been treating Tua for the last 3 years says he's fine, because of course he's going to say he's fine. And there are different definitions of what is and what isn't fine. The doctor that's been treating Tua for the last 3 years could testify under oath and pass a polygraph test that he thinks or she thinks that Tua is fine. But the team doctors are the ones that ultimately have their ongoing ability to work for those teams riding on the accuracy of their assessments. And without that ability to check out that hip, without that ability to check out whatever else on him may not be 100%, it's going to be hard for someone to pull the trigger. And I'll repeat what a GM told me back when Tua got hurt. 3 years in college football, 3 lower body injuries, and you're talking about a much greater degree of physicality and roughness, and you have to assume that that trend is going to continue when he gets to the NFL. And for a guy who's fairly mobile, that's not a good sign. So I feel bad for him that he can't get properly checked out ahead of time, but those are the circumstances, and I think it could result in him sliding out of the top 10.
And then there's Justin Herbert then that would move up maybe just because of that, or the rumors that the Dolphins like him or other teams do like him is actually valid. What did you make of the report that the Giants' Joe Judge had a chat with Herbert? What the hell is that all about?
Well, it's simple, and we've seen this happen before. We've seen it happen with great quarterbacks in the top 5 when there's a possibility for a trade. Even if the team that's holding the pick doesn't want him, the more you know about that guy, because if somebody trades up with the Giants at number 4, they're not trading up just so they can brag, hey, we picked up the 4th pick in the draft. Now who the hell do we take? They're coming up to get somebody, and they're most likely coming up to get Justin Herbert before the Dolphins can get him. So if it's the Chargers at 6 or the Panthers at 7 who are going to be negotiating with the Giants, the more the Giants know about Herbert, the better suited they're going to be, Rich, to negotiate in a meaningful way, because you are trading that player to the Chargers or the Panthers. You're not trading that pick. So you want to be able to say, oh, hey, we've studied the film and we've talked to him, and no, we think he's worth more, and here's why. You know, ultimately it could be the Dolphins who do a flip-flop, 4 and 5, just to keep the Panthers or the Chargers from taking that 4th spot. But I think that's why the Giants are doing what they're doing. They've got their guy in Daniel Jones. They're not going to supplant him with a top 5 pick at quarterback 1 year later. They want to be ready, though, in the event that these negotiations happen for somebody who wants to jump up and get Justin Herbert. And you know what? The Giants may not get the chance, because maybe the Lions will be the team that slides down for one of these teams that would like to go get Herbert.
I love it. So it gives them the ammunition to ask for more if they know just how good the kid is. That's what you're saying.
As a result of their research, they say, boy, we wish we didn't know these things. Hopefully they are gleaning the good things from Justin Herbert. And there's a lot of good from Justin Herbert. I remember at one point, and you know, you always hear during college football season, Rich, this guy's going to be the first overall pick, that guy's going to be the first overall pick.
Sure.
But there was buzz that if Herbert had come out after the 2018 college season, he would have been in the running for the number 1 overall pick last year.
Yeah, and that the Giants were disappointed that he decided to stay in Oregon and that they were sitting there 2nd overall. They might not have taken Saquon Barkley if Herbert was in right then and there. I heard the same thing. That was real, right? A couple of years ago?
I mean, look, who knows? But there was a time, just like there was a time where Tua was regarded as the number 1 overall pick for this year, there was a time where Herbert's name had bubbled up, and that's happened time and again. Who would have ever dreamed that Joe Burrow was going to be the number 1 overall pick a year ago?
Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk on NBC, SN every single day preceding us, and Mike Tirico's show, and then, of course, obviously on podcast form, and then at Pro Football Talk on Twitter, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Odell Beckham and Leonard Fournette both rumored to be on the block. What's the smoke screen or realness of all that in your mind?
Well, it's definitely real with Leonard Fournette, and the Jaguars have come to the conclusion that from a culture standpoint, they're trying to move on with guys who are going to fit better with what they're trying to do. And I also think at a certain level, Rich, you're going to see under Jay Gruden, the new offensive coordinator there, an offense that maybe doesn't incorporate the downhill running style of Leonard Fournette. It's going to be more of a wide-open passing game with Gardner Minshew. But now they need to find somebody who will take him for 1 year, $4.1 million, with the ability to pick up an option for 2021, which would be $8.48 million, for a guy that had 1,674 yards from scrimmage last year. And there's so many people out there, when they hear Leonard Fournette, they initially make a face. It's like, he had 1,674 yards from scrimmage last year for a team that had a work-in-progress passing game from Nick Foles to a rookie sixth-rounder, and then back to Foles, and then back to the rookie, and through it all, Fournette had his best season in football really since his freshman year at LSU, where we all were like, hey, Leonard Fournette may be the first overall pick in the draft at some point. So the guy's got skills. The guy's got talent. Now, Ian Rappaport reported earlier today that the Jaguars are having a hard time finding any interest in the guy. And, who knows? Maybe at some point the Jaguars are going to have to pay a little bit of his salary to get him off the roster. Or maybe they're just going to have to take a sixth or a seventh round pick. But they want to avoid that $4.1 million, and they want to move on. It's just going to be hard for them to get value, apparently. But I don't know. The Steelers are the kind of team where if it came out the Steelers traded for Leonard Fournette, we would say, like I said when they got Minka Fitzpatrick last year during the season, damn, I wish I would have thought of that ahead of time, because it makes sense. I mean, doesn't it make sense to see Leonard Fournette in black and gold doing the Jerome Bettis thing and just pounding between the tackles and giving Ben Roethlisberger the help that he doesn't have now that Le'Veon Bell's gone?
No doubt about it. No question. And James Conner there, too, in the role that he was in with Bell, right? Just put Fournette in the Bell cow role, right, and let Conner get in there in a way that he has not been able to stay healthy. That makes such sense to the point where why in the hell would it happen, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. I suggested yesterday the Chiefs should be at the front of the line, and
right.
And a lot of Chiefs fans went crazy. It's like their leading rusher last year was Damian Williams with 498 yards. He got 90 of those yards on one play against the Vikings. You take that play away, he had 408 yards. For a team that has such a great passing offense, that the running lane should be wide open for a running back. They spent $3 million on LaShawn McCoy. He didn't have 500 rushing yards last year. So if you're going to spend $3 million on LaShawn, $4.1 million on Fournette, and you put him with the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu, they grew up in the same neighborhood in New Orleans. If Leonard Fournette's a pain in the butt in Jacksonville, he's going to be the opposite of it if he's got Tyrann Mathieu's influence all the time. And just think about that Chiefs offense. If you put a high-end tailback in there, a guy who's capable of doing what Fournette did last year, you may just want to hand him the trophy and not even bother with the season.
Right. I guess we do need to see. It makes total sense. I mean, we do need to see what happens in the draft. All the mocks that I see have DeAndre Swift potentially falling to the Chiefs at 32, and then there's of course all the trades that might happen of people. 32 is usually that spot where somebody trades back in for a fifth year of control of somebody like, say, Lamar Jackson or Teddy Bridgewater, like we've seen in previous drafts. Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen show. What about Odell? We didn't hit that. Is that you said Fournette was real? Does that mean Odell is not? In terms
well, we don't know, because again,
right.
like we talked about earlier, they're never going to come out and tell us the truth if it is the truth, because the last thing the Browns need is to have Odell Beckham Jr. thinking that they were or are considering moving him. And when the report came out last week from Mark Malusis at WFAN, that struck me as, when it's one of those weird curveball reports, Rich, where you're like, well, where the hell did this come from? This person doesn't break news. To me, I find that as being more credible, because that guy's got one swing of yak, right? If I screw something up, if Mort screws something up, if Shefty screws something up, if anybody who does it for a living screws something up, you're right back on the horse the next day. And you're going to be reporting something accurate that inevitably will make people forget about the one you screwed up. But if you're just going to swing the bat one time, you better hit the ball. So I think, and based on some of the stuff I did to try to put meat on the bone, I tend to think that maybe there was something there that didn't go anywhere, and now the Browns are trying their damnedest to just get the toothpaste back in the tube, because the last thing they want is Odell Beckham Jr. to feel like his team doesn't love him the way that it should, and that his team was considering trading him, and maybe Odell's going to be the one who starts saying, hey, I'd like to be traded to this team or that team. I mean, he's definitely wanted to play for the Patriots in the past. Now, Tom Brady's not there, so he may not feel that way, but I think that if there was anything with the talk, it's not a surprise at all that they will shout from the rooftops now that it's over and that it's apparently done, that there was never anything to it, because they have to deal with Odell going forward.
A few more minutes left with Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, profootballtalk.com, PFT PM podcast that I'll be appearing later on. So I guess it'll be PFT PM podcast with Rich Eisen, Joe Burrow, and Chase Young later on. That you can take that all in. You can promote it however you wish, Mike. When it all comes down to it.
The big 36 font, Rich Eisen,
Thank you.
and then we'll use 9 point for Burrow and 8 point for Young.
You know, that's respectful, and I appreciate that. So the trade up, trade down, 72 hours before the draft, most likely to trade up, most likely to trade down would be fill in the blank.
Seattle most likely to trade down because they always do.
That's
right? They always do.
That's right.
It's like every year that John Schneider's been the GM, they've found a way to trade down. Trade up, I really don't know. I mean, there's been talk, and Peter King's got a great mock draft in Football Morning in America where the Chiefs maybe trade up to get Henry Ruggs, the receiver from Alabama. The Patriots maybe trade up to get Tua. If and when he slides out of the top 10, maybe the Patriots are the ones that are putting out the rumors that he's going to slide out of the top 10 so they can go up and get their new quarterback. But to trade up, you know, the Falcons have done it before. And here's the thing. The Falcons have done it before when they were rumored to be trying to do it. So whenever there's a rumor that the Falcons are thinking about trading up, I take it seriously because for whatever reason, Thomas Dimitroff strategically has no problem with getting the word out that he's looking to trade up because maybe that's the way to eventually find someone who will say yes when you've made sure everybody knows that you're thinking about trading up. So I think Peter said that they're looking to trade up to get a corner. So I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say the Falcons because they wouldn't try to hide it. They just go ahead and make sure everybody is aware of it.
And then just touching on the Patriots, I mean, shoot, we can spend between now and forever trying to read tea leaves with Bill Belichick. The sense that he will not go into 2020 with his quarterback room as currently constituted seems to be a prevalent one. Where do you stand on this, Mike Florio?
Well, when I hear Devin McCourty and Stephon Gilmore and Matthew Slater, who's currently now the longest tenured Patriot since Stephen Gostkowski's not coming back, they all praise Jarrett Stidham, what he did at practice, what he did to help make that defense as good as it was last year, challenging them every single day. It's hard for me not to think that there's a sufficient level of comfort within the organization that Stidham can be the guy. 20 years almost after Tom Brady got the reins as a second-year guy, Stidham may be the guy who gets the reins. Now, look, it all may be part of an elaborate effort to keep us all confused as to what they're thinking about doing during the draft, and I would expect them to draft a quarterback at some point during this process, but the idea of trading up to get Tua or making a big swing in round one at a guy who would instantly become the starter, I have a hard time processing it and accepting it, but, you know, that just shows the genius of Bill Belichick because you never know what the guy's going to do. And I think he likes it that way.
Okay. And then the final, I guess, quarterback piece, unless there's another. Do you think there's a fifth after Jordan Love? And let's take it starting first, what Jordan Love, where he may wind up and who might be that fifth quarterback sneaking in.
Yeah, look, I don't know that we're going to get 5 or even 4 in the first round. A lot of people, and again, who knows who's putting it out there and who knows who's trying to get Jordan Love to slide. But when you mentioned earlier, Rich, the possibility of someone trading back into 32, and as you remember perfectly, the Teddy Bridgewater move, the Lamar Jackson move, maybe that's the Jordan Love spot, right? He makes it all the way through round one, and then there it is at number 32. Somebody calls the Chiefs and says, "All right, we've got an offer for you, and we're going to grab Jordan Love, and we're going to control him for the next 5 years." So, to me, that's a very intriguing spot.
Okay, Mike, appreciate the time. Thanks for the call. I will chat with you later today. I will be zooming in for those scoring at home from the right side of my desk. And then, you know, I have, just so you know, I've got books behind me. Haven't read a single one of them in a very long time, but it makes me look like I'm well read. And that's the way I roll. As you know, all of our colleagues have been rolling that way from their
Hey, one of the
offices.
things about this pandemic that has been fascinating, any cable news channel, any sports channel, you get to see those backgrounds, and you get to try to psychoanalyze the person based upon everything that's behind them.
Yes.
And it's been like an unexpected, I never thought I'd have this access into someone's home before and see their choices. But I'll be ready to scrutinize your choices.
Yes, I'll have a photograph of me with my kids behind me because I want to give off the impression I'm Father of the Year. And then all these books that I haven't read to make it seem like I'm well read. I'm just putting it all out there. But that's where I'll be zooming with you later on. I look forward to it.
Well, you will see me with a guitar behind me that I can't play.
Is that right? What guitar is that? What is that?
I've got some guitars hanging on the wall. I do these down in my barn, and the guitars are there for the ambiance. At one point, I tried to play them, but then I realized it's either too late to develop the skills or I never had the skills in the first place, so they just hang there and look good. They give me street cred and make it look like I actually know what I'm doing. I know how to hang them on the wall. That's what I know how to do.
Are you scribbling on them to make it seem like that they're a world-famous rocker, to make it seem like you're connected in that way? You should do that.
Actually, and this is the God's honest truth, a friend of mine brought over an autographed guitar from Alabama whenever they had their final tour. So that's one of the 4. I was never a big Alabama fan, but there is a signed guitar hanging on the wall from Alabama.
There you go. Mike, we'll chat later on. I appreciate this call.
See you, Rich.
You got it. It's Mike Florio, at Pro Football Talk on Twitter. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.